Welcome back. You're not watching the lifestyle segment on the weekend show brought to you by Holo Crunch Popcorn. Happy, how do they say it? Eid Mubarak.
Eid Mubarak.
Any plans?
Rest.
Is there ram this time? Or this is not the ram
No,
one?
this is not wrong.
I always miss it. I wish we could just have it every time. I think I'll buy myself ram today
Okay.
just to celebrate.
I should join you with that.
Please do not. So, we've seen a lot of crisis and conflict in Nigeria, and for most people, they will tell you it's as a result of illiteracy or poor education. And in recent times, we've had numbers of children out of school go from 8 to 10 to 12 million. And so it's a constant conversation. What are the implications of children being out of school, and how does this affect the country and national development? Also, talking about national development, what role do young people have to play when it comes to governance and leadership? On today's lifestyle segment, we will be talking about education and governance and its role in national development. And we have two young people who are doing extremely great things in their spaces. One is doing work in education, constantly speaking to children, encouraging people to go back to school, and also working with government and policy on this. And then we have another gentleman who is also working on policy and governance and leadership. And that's because our generation, we're told we're the leaders of tomorrow, but this is the tomorrow and we're here. However, we cannot miss the chance of ensuring that the younger generation are involved and included in governance and education from now to avoid future problems. And joining us on this segment, we have
Jeremiah Oseni, who is the founder and executive director, the Begotten Educational Foundation. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Andy. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and we also have Ayola Omole, who is the executive director at HEDCO. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning to you. Thank you.
Welcome, gentlemen. I'll start with you, Jeremiah, because I've followed your work for at least 5-6 years now, from when I was with the Global Shoppers community. And you have been passionate about education, and I know of the Begotten. Can you tell us what made you pick education as an area of interest, and what the Begotten is about?
Okay, thank you very much once again for having me. It's a very interesting question because it boils down to the meaning of education, and as we all know, education is the bedrock to development, and what that means in a layman context is that education, knowledge as it is to life what the heart is to the body system, without which the entire system can collapse. There will be a shutdown, of the entire system. So education is that vital. It is very important. Growing up in an environment where, we couldn't enjoy too much privileges, you could really just see that this was, as a result of poor education, mass illiteracy. And looking at the country that we are today, with, when you started by, giving the statistics and all of that, currently we have close to 20 million, if not even more, of children, Nigerian children, that are out of school. It is the most popular, it is the most, it's the highest number, in any given country in the world. That's a call for concern. And that's why the Begotten is out there to see that we put measures in place, come out with initiatives, and of course with programs to get these children out of school. 20 million is not bag of rice. It's not Gary.
Even bag of rice is expensive.
Human beings. We're talking about lives. And these children are already being robbed of their future, being robbed of their potential. So the Begotten as a foundation, is going in, lobbying with state actors also, to see that they implement certain policies, to see that certain laws are being put into place. For instance, like the Child Right Act, which are still not, which some states are still finding it really difficult to implement. Glory be to God. Among the top 5, just recently, some others just passed theirs right now, but there are still states in Nigeria, and 12 years later, they're still fighting to rectify the Child Right Act in their state. A right that simply upheld, the protection of a child and makes it mandatory for a parent to send their child to school. Such beautiful piece of legislature is still being swept under the carpet. So our organization, we are coming out to say, hey, it is high time for us to help these children, give them what is rightfully theirs. Education is not a luxury. It's the right of these children. Give them what is rightfully theirs, just so that Nigeria as a nation can be better for it. Apart from that, our works through advocacy, we also send these kids back to school. Before now, you know, you have worked with us before, you know, when we rolled out the Future 500 Challenge.
Yes.
We started that just in the FCT, where in each of the area councils, you know, at that particular period, we enrolled 500 children back to school. You know, at that time, we were able to do 3,000 plus, close to 4,000 children in school. Recently, we started the Street to Success program, which is multifaceted in its own way. You know, we're looking at, because when we had the new statistic, you know, out when they released it, say almost 20 million, we also had to also, you know, top up our efforts to say, how do we make sure that these children, you know, come back to school? Because it's a blow on the nation on the long run, because right now we are dealing with insecurity, we are dealing with the bad economy, we are dealing with bad governance. A whole lot of these persons that are out of school, they are not going to Niger or Cameroon. They are still here with us. They are growing, they are breathing, they are living with us. A time will come in the future where there will be openings for electoral position. This person will still be some of the people who will contest, and then we'll have continuous, you know, bad leadership, bad governance, and it's going to rub off on the economy of the nation as well, where you have somebody who is at the helm of affair of the economy who doesn't know 1+1, who can't, you know, meet, somebody who is an ambassador of a country, who can dialogue, who can, you know, meet with other nations to say, okay, how do we bring in foreign, you know, investment into the country? You know, it is such an important thing. Point a prosperous country to me today in the world, and I will show you countries that invested so well in their education system. Should we talk about the USA? Can we talk about Canada, UK, Europe, and all of that? You know, they are investing so much in their education system, and we are seeing the importance today. So it plays a whole, it goes a long way in shaping a nation. I dare to also tell my friends most times that education is the feeder pillar of any nation. Of course, we have so many pillars in the society and all of that, but education is the feeder pillar. Education is, just take an example, you know, your studio is very beautiful. You have,
Thank you.
You have good lights. Yes, you have good lights here in the studio. But you see this fancy light, these bulbs and all of that. Imagine that they are not connected to a power source. They'll just be there for decoration. So it is very good to invest in infrastructure, road networks, and of course try to get in some other things, some little trickles, you know, of direct foreign investment and all of that. But if you don't maintain the feeder pillar, like I said, the heart of the entire system, you know, every other thing will just be running on comatose. Every other thing will just be there on life support, which is where we are right now. So it is very, very necessary. And we are calling on everybody, all the stakeholders, especially those at the government angle, because this very sensitive pillar, permit me some little more time, this very sensitive pillar has suffered the most attack in Nigeria. Because, okay, let me just even make an analogy right now. When was the last time you did like this? You checked your heart. Oh, it's my heart beating. When was the last time you did that? I believe we didn't do that this morning, right? Okay, anyways, I did that in my room because
I checked out my phone or my watch every day because
exactly. So now the thing is, we can, of course, you comb your hair this morning, which is even a non-living thing. Make sure that we, you know, came out with the best looks and all of that. But you know what? The same thing with our education pillar. We prioritize other things. Of course, they're also very important. But this particular pillar is not being prioritized. We have somebody at the helm of affairs of this pillar in the country who came out and said, guys, I have failed. Fun fact, that person is still at the helm of affairs. So what are we talking about? You know, it has received so much attack, especially from the government angle. An example, low funding. We have not been able to meet up with the United Nations cutoff in terms of budget for education. We have not been able to see a prioritized government. You know, we've not been able to see a strengthened political will, you know, to this feeder pillar, like I call it, right? In the sense that if there's the right political will, those laws that I'm talking about should have been in place right now. There should have been development in the education space, in the sense that curriculums should have been revised by now. Schools still use curriculums that my great-grandfathers used, or my grandfather or my fathers that they used. Times have changed. We entered the AI, we just entered the AI stage right now. You're in cybersecurity, you know what's currently happening with the AI. And right now, there are possibilities. In fact, Microsoft already stated this week, there are possibilities that GPT-4 has already started demonstrating symptoms of AGI, which is artificial general intelligence. That is mad. But we are still, in Nigeria, we're still using curriculum that were for, you know, artisans, were for agriculturists and all of that. That's a good one. So attacks from the government. Again, education, the same pillar has experienced crazy attacks from insurgents in Nigeria. Let's talk about the Chibok girls, the Dachi girls, the Kaduna kidnap, things that are happening in the down south, you know, the stay-at-home thing and some other things affecting education. You know, the insurgency, schools have been attacked, teachers have been killed, you know, buildings destroyed. Apart from religious center, education space, you know, schools infrastructure, education infrastructure are things that have also, you know, a particular thing that have also been affected, in, you know, by sudden insurgencies, and there are no political will from the government to say, okay, how do we get this solved? The more these attacks are happening, the more children are going out of school, the more bleeding we are having as a nation, the less we are developing, the less our economy is thriving, and we still call ourselves the giant of Africa. Apart from the government and insurgency, the social space also has also joined in attacking this sector. What do I mean by that? We have programs that do not, you know, that recognizes, that keeps on recognizing illiterates. Let me put it that way. Not, of course, I'm not going to mention names, but again, we have low preference and low appreciation for intellectuals, for intellectual properties. You have somebody who graduates in this country from first class and stuff like that, so no recognition, nothing whatsoever. But you have somebody who just goes up to social media and does some very immoral things or some very funny things, and the next day you see, okay, this person now owns a house in VGC, this person bought the latest Benz for the mom and stuff. The social space also, Andy and Didi, has also contributed in attacking this pillar through promoting negative stereotypes on education, e.g. the popular one, school na scam, who school help, who education help. You know, this stereotype, these things, you know, they go a long way in discouraging people, in making children not go back to school. We send kids to school. We have over 6,000 on our record right now. I can tell you that it is a struggle to get some of these kids back to school. They so much believe that, you know what, no way for me out there. Of course, you can earn money legitimately through other means, but you see education, you see knowledge, it is fundamental. You will come back to it later. And if you are robbed of it now, it is going to affect them later. Most importantly, another part that is currently affecting this sector right now that we all need to pay attention to is climate change, Andy. And I am I'm going to say this vehemently to everybody, to the world to hear. Some people still think climate change is nothing. It is really affecting education in Nigeria. Take, for instance, the flooding that happened last year, nationwide flooding that happened last year. We, the Begotten Educational Foundation, took a need assessment survey across the 5 worst hit states, and thousands of school buildings were
I'm sorry, Jeremiah, we need to bring Bola in before the segment is actually over. But you do make a couple of valid points. For instance, I do understand, fun fact, out of the people who got forms to run for National Assembly election, about 60% of them had just SSC results. And these are the people who are meant to make laws for us. Interestingly, I watched the acceptance speech of the President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and he stated that education will be a priority, and it's something that he would focus on. It's important that we pay attention, and people like you also hold them accountable, because I've been doing a PhD for 5 years in Nigeria.
Oh my God.
And I lost 2 years because for 1 year there was COVID, and just last year or the other year we had 8 months of ASU strike. And so that's 2 years which our students have lost. I mean, this for me is a PhD because I chose to do it in Nigeria. But imagine undergrad, and most times this now has a ripple effect on people because families now have to spend more money for the children at home. Some of these children now get into crime, they have no jobs, and so it's brilliant that you're doing what you're doing. I respect the fact that you went from 500 when you started and I knew to over 5,000 now. So brilliant work. But this now ties into the governance and leadership and national development.
Yes. Ayola, let's bring you into the conversation. Could you share what specific roles now does education play in national development and governance?
Thank you so much for the question. I want to say a very big thank you for the amazing job you're doing. The show is really big out there. Thanks for the invitation. So for education is very important in all spheres of life, but essentially for governance as well, because the way we see governance and government, especially in Nigeria, I would say it's we don't really apply the level of seriousness that is expected and required, because if you want to change a country, it's almost a full-time job. I mean, it's not something you just do randomly as if it's a random task. It's a very serious job, it's a serious business, and that's why you have to be as strategic as possible. And that is why you need education. And you know, on an elementary level, everybody should be educated in a country. I mean, you should be able to read and write, you should be lettered. But then what I really think is also important is political education, because it's a neglected aspect. You're a citizen, you need to understand your rights as citizens, and you also need to understand your power as citizen. That's one, and that means that you have the right to be a member of that society. And power means you have the ability to make change happen in your society, right? And for this to happen, we need to take advantage of existing platforms and take lessons from them. We need to bring also political education very close to the people, because once you now know your rights and you know your power, you also need to be able to understand that you should be accountable, right? Because you actually have a responsibility to make your country a better place. It's beyond you just being a member of the society. You actually have a responsibility, whether you are in government or you are just a citizen. And that is why we need to educate people. We need to go from the elementary level. We need to even make the ordinary Nigerians understand policy, like education, I mean economy, health, security. You need to understand the basic responsibility of your government, so you know the right questions to ask.
Talking about responsibility of government, and I like that you brought it in. We have the Yobe State Executive Secretary of the State Emergency Management Agency, Dr. Goje Mohammed, joining us virtually. If you recall, Jeremiah also spoke about how the flooding affected people going to school, and Yobe State also experienced a lot of flooding and also conflict in the past. So we have the Executive Secretary joining us to discuss surviving in a post-conflict society and how climate change and security has affected society, which we can tie in here. Good morning, Dr. Goje. Okay, so while he tries to connect with us, I like the fact that both of you have tied in governance and education. But Jeremiah, while we try to get him in, what are the active steps that government should take? Because we now have a new government, elected leaders, National Assembly, state government, and presidency. They'll be sworn in on the 29th of May. Right. What active steps do you think, and what actions do you think they should take as priority to make education a priority in the next 4 years?
Good one. So quickly, 2 steps. I'm just going to mention 2 action steps right now. The first is funding. The second, that's budget. Then, of course, the second is policy. I'm going to explain quickly. The first is funding. If this government wants to demonstrate what they have said, if they want to do the talk, they want to walk the talk at this point, right? You don't want to tell Nigerians that those political manifestos were not just higgy-haggers. We need to see it reflect in the budget that they will pass. So that is first. At least the budget of this new government should match with the percentage of the United Nations. Right? Like that's what we are saying, because and my pain here is actually for primary education, because sometimes when we see this budget, Andy, they say, oh, they are giving 30 billion, they are saying this. Not all of it goes to primary education. Of course, you have every other sector. You have other agencies too. Exactly. So we're looking at prioritizing, putting funds there, in the education space, just so that there will be massive development. There will be teachers, professional development. Teachers will be trained. Schools will be made to be safe. Schools will be made to be safe. Fences should be erected, and of course, education material should be put in place. Investment should be made for our curriculum also to be revamped, our curriculum to be updated. The second, like I said, is the policies. We need to see a government that will come on board and say, okay, what is happening with the Nigerian Child Right Act? What are the states, which, let's look at the states that have not, rectified it. Okay, let's make sure that they do it. And secondly, the UBE, the Universal Basic Education policy that we have been operating on, needs to be checked. That policy needs to be rejigged. It needs to be, because...
Sorry to interrupt you, and we'll come back to you. I think we have Dr. Goje joining us now. Dr. Mohammed Goje is the Executive Secretary of the State Emergency Management Agency in UB. Good morning, Dr. Goje. Yes, can you hear me? I think we may be having some technical difficulties. So you're talking about UBE, but before you wrap up with UBE, we always talk about funding, right? And if you see in places like the United States and maybe even in the United Kingdom, the private sector plays a major role. You have endowment fund. Nigeria has the richest black man in the world.
Sure.
Why do we constantly focus on government? What about the role of the private sector, the role of the telcos that are making tons of money, and some of these organizations? Nigeria is broke as a country. We don't have as much money as we think, and the money has to come from somewhere. People are not paying taxes as much as they should. What about the role of the public sector? Because we keep on pushing this to the government. Don't you think they should play a role in this funding conversation?
Andy, I beg to differ. Nigeria is not broke. Nigeria's money is being mismanaged. Gross mismanagement is what we're having.
Okay, Dr. Goje, can you hear me? Hello? Please go on.
So, like I was saying, gross mismanagement is what we're having. And this is still
Hello,
a lot of lack of education, because when you don't have people in place to drive certain sector, mismanagement, will happen. So, I mean, if you say people are not paying their tax, I also beg to differ. Do you know the trillions of naira that Federal Inland Revenue Service declares every year? People are paying their tax. They're paying their taxes. But the management of this fund is what the issue is. Now, going to the question of the, getting the private sectors involved, Nigeria is currently open actually to PPPs, getting, enabling public-private partnerships and all of that. But so far, we have seen the PPP system only in infrastructure development. Say, for instance, the Third Niger Bridge, some other projects in Lagos, some road infrastructure network, along the northern parts of Nigeria and stuff like that. But private individuals are not being encouraged right now to come into the education space, which is one of the reasons, which is one of the attacks we're having, in the government circle as well. Even the government, Nigeria is rich enough to even support the private system. Look at what happened during COVID. And you made mention of Nigeria having the richest man, the richest black man, in Africa and all of that. It is true. Look at what happened during COVID. 3 of them came together. There was a coalition of rich men. Do you know how many billions they raised up? Do you know how many trillions they raised to support people and all of that? But if our government can give them that open hand as well to say, hey, please, Mr. A, please, Mr. B, this certain amount of your proceeds should come in and all of that. Dangote donates how many? Thousands of cars to the Nigerian police force, from time to time. If the government will say, okay, don't worry, we are going to, bring in this donation to the education sector, and of course, we are going to make these donations tax deductible. A lot of them, I bet you, Andy, a lot of them will begin to pour in their funds towards education. And that, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. If you prioritize infrastructures, you do these roads, you do power, you do some other things, we will keep on doing them. Because the people are not educated enough on how to manage these things. So that is for me, it is the wrong form of investment. The right form of investment is teach a child first how to drive a car. Before you buy a car for that child, or before you pave the road where the child will drive the car, if the human being does not know how to drive the car, if you buy the car for that child, they will scatter things. Nobody will ply the road. This is the essence of education that we are shouting about. It plays a key role in we not mismanaging our things. Nigeria is blessed, but Nigeria is greatly mismanaged when it comes to our funding. It is greatly mismanaged. Other sectors are important. Security is important. You know what? But education, tying into the question you asked my dear brother here initially, talking about the role of government, the role of education in government. The right educated persons, in the legislature, in the legislative arm of government, will be able to make better decisions, informed decisions, pass the right laws, and all of that, right?
Yeah.
So coming back again to education, especially in the areas of climate and all that, it is good we look, we're looking to what is happening. As an organization, we are already putting up some climate smart education systems, up on board to really see that, if such subsequent, climate disasters should happen, children will not be affected in school.
Yeah, Ayala, so Joseph has mentioned a lot of lapses in education, in the educational sector in Nigeria, which is not news to us. But when it comes to governance now, could you share certain effective or advantages of good governance so that we know, what to expect from the incoming government, particularly in the educational sector?
Yeah, the expectation of good governance is actually simple.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I mean, people want to be prosperous, go to school, afford basic education, afford health care, be able to make one or two, you want to buy cars, I mean, for your movements. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is you want to live like a human being, like just a human. You want to function, you want to work, you want to, when you get home, you want to, your children to be back home, and you want to have good meals, and the next day you want to be out again, work. You don't want to be kidnapped. So governance addresses these things: economy, security, health, how productive is your economy, employment rates. You know how many Nigerians are out of jobs right now. You know how many companies are folding up, unable to produce, and that means that you are unable to employ people. We know what is happening with security in Nigeria, across different regions and zones. Each region has a peculiar challenge. Northeast, insurgency, southeast, what is going on. So governance is supposed to be able to find the problems in each of these sectors and solve them, and that is.
So I'll take it: security, the
Government
economy, and just good leadership priority. Thank you so much, Viola and Jeremiah, for your contributions. We'll bring you in as time goes on to continue this conversation. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll have a conversation with Dr. Goje, and also we'll have a quick conversation about the importance of Ramadan. Take a quick break and see you after this break.